Welcome, friends, to the June 24th meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm Julie Schmidt, Senior Director of External Affairs for KET, and honored to serve as your president this year. To provide our invocation is Dick Clay, President and CEO of the Filson Historical Society. He's also a member of the 1912 Society, a sustaining member, and a Paul Harris Fellow. Dick?
Thank you, President Julie. If you would bow your heads, this is a prayer from Richard Brewer, the wonderful Catholic priest and mystic, and it's his prayer for our community. Loving God, you fill all things with a fullness and hope that we can never comprehend. Thank you for leading us into a time where more of reality is being unveiled for us all to see. We pray that you will take away our natural temptation for cynicism, denial, fear, and despair. Help us have the courage to awaken to greater truth, greater humility, and greater care for one another. May we place our hope in what matters and what lasts, trusting in your eternal presence and love. Listen to our heart's longings for the healing of our suffering world. Knowing, good God, you are hearing us better than we are speaking, we offer these prayers in all the holy names of God. Amen. Amen.
Now to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test is Kevin Wardell, retired Chief Administrative Officer for Norton Cancer Center. He's also the past president of our club, one of the truly best we ever had. And he's the recipient of the Rotarian of the Year Award and member of the 1912 Society and a Paul Harris Society member. Kevin?
Thank you, Julie. It's really great to be back and to see all of you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so let's go ahead with the four-way test and things we think say and do. Rotary's historic saying that ties us all together around the world. It's true. Fair law, sir. Will build good. Will be official law, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin and Dick. Wonderful to see you both in person today, and it's awesome to see all of you all today in person. Now, it's our honor to welcome the guests to Rotary today. And Rotarians, if you would come to the microphone and introduce yourself and your guests. As you're doing that, I am privileged to introduce Ben East, who's the Early Childhood Director with the Fisher Committee for Academic Excellence. Ben, if you could please stand so everyone can see you. We're so glad to have you with us.
Almost retired from a very successful run as president, President Julie. My guest is the Reverend Corey Miller. Corey is my successor at Cabbage Patch as executive director, and is doing a fabulous job, I might say, and is also a prospective member of this club.
And now, oh, I'm sorry, please go ahead. I can see there's a.
President Julie, Tony Pepper at the Home School, and my guest today is my wife.
And now, please welcome Ken Grossman, owner, executive image, custom clothier. He's also an incoming vice president of the board and a Paul Harris Fellow.
Thank you, Julie. Wow, it's great to see everybody on this beautiful day in this great venue. First, I'd like to wish a happy birthday to all Rotarians celebrating birthdays this week. There are so many that the names were mentioned and sparked. So take a look and be sure to wish your fellow Rotarians happy birthday. Join fellow Rotarians for the Rivera Fair this Saturday, June 26th. I see Larry Slum waving his hand. He's very excited. It's outside work, no special skills are needed. Anyone interested, contact Larry, Chair of our Lifeline. Save the date. Our next business networking event will be Tuesday, August 3rd at 5 p.m. Mike Richardson, the Glenview Trust Company, will host us at their new headquarters on Highway 42. You know, I drive by that building about every day, and I'm really curious what's inside. I am going to be there, and hope you will too. Phil Stone, CNBC contributor, will be sharing some economic insights. Next week's meeting, you won't want to miss this one. Very unique. Will feature the first of our Rotary Riverside chats with Senator Rand Paul and community activist Christopher Tuex. Join us as we chat about President Trump's pardon of Christopher Tuex and why Senator Rand Paul was behind it. As you know, we have a new reservation system. We appreciate your registering, your attendance, and if you plan to have lunch in advance. Please note the reservations do close on Friday at the close of business. This is the deadline that the restaurant is requiring of us, so please respond to your intentions. The meeting will also be available via Zoom. We are working to improve the technical quality. We'll be back to you.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned Zoom. We have many Rotarians with us joining virtually. We're so glad to have them here with us as well. Each year, the president has the great opportunity to name an overarching theme for their year. And I was thrilled to select literacy. I can't think of a more important issue that has a lasting impact on one's life. Education, and specifically literacy, is key for an individual to reach their full potential and help break the cycle of poverty. I'm grateful for the Rotary Fund of Louisville's investments in literacy projects this year that included the default school, the Hug Reading Program, Jolly Part Imagination Library Local Chapter, and the West End School Literacy Project, their curriculum, in addition to our continued support for our Rotary Scholars at Iroquois and Western High Schools, along with other scholarship programs that the Rotary Club supports and sponsors. We began the year with Sharon Darling, the founder of the National Center for Families Learning, headquartered here in Louisville. And I'm delighted we are closing my year with our guest speaker today. To introduce her, please welcome to the podium Franklin Jelsma, who's managing partner of Wyatt Tarrant Combs, LLP, and the Paul Harris Fellow.
Thank you for making education a focus of your year. And thanks to all the Rotarians who've been so involved in helping in education initiatives. It's really what the Bridger Committee is all about. I've been a member of the Bridger Committee now somewhere between 10 and 15 years. I don't remember it, but it's really been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. And it's an honor for me to be able to introduce Bridget today. Everybody knows that we're a poor state, right? Relative to the rest of the nation, and we're trying to keep up in an increasingly sophisticated and global economy. And really, most of us, I think, if you really think about it, education is the answer to Kentucky, right? And, CARA was a huge step forward. That's been 30 years ago. And we had a lot of momentum nationally then. It's kind of regain some of that. What the Bridger Committee is all about is kids and putting them first and improving public education. And personally, I believe that education is economic development. And it's the only viable long-term solution for what ails us, increasing opportunities, strengthening communities, and improving quality of life. And there really aren't any shortcuts, right? I would say there's a three-pronged strategy for success in Kentucky: education, 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 right? So I was the chair of the Bridger Committee back in 2014 or 15. And then executive director came to me, and this was really taking your chairing the board, and I'm retiring. So usually you can kind of sail through some of these things. A lot of work. But so we did the search and interviewed a lot of people and put in a lot of time. And when you set down on paper what you're really looking for in a top-notch executive director, you think about you want somebody smart, and the committee needs somebody who can be policy wonk, but also can be personable and people have that savvy that you need in the halls of Frankfurt to push through legislation, have the determination to follow through and be a successful fundraiser. And above all, we wanted somebody who was passionate about improving education. And that's what we saw in Bridget, and I'll say the last 6-7 years, she's proven that out. It's one of the best decisions I've ever been a part of. Bridget is the foremost expert on public education in Kentucky. She's being recognized nationally for her work. We couldn't be happier to have her leading the Bridget Committee. She really is an asset for the state of Kentucky. And it's my honor to introduce her to you all, and we look forward to what she has to say.
Okay, first thing first, can I bring the mic? Is that okay? Okay, as I'm doing that, anybody questioning what the word equity means? I'm going to use this as an illustration right now. So podiums never work for me unless they're secret. You can see me. Okay, so having a mic that I can actually move away from the podium and interact with you allows me to really give a better presentation. So if I were tall, I may be able to stay behind the podium. So an illustration of equity. I want to underscore Franklin's assertion that education is economic development as I open our presentation. And there's a point that has been salient for me that I carry into presentations like this to underscore what Franklin shared. About 2 months before, and not even 2 months, a month before COVID hit, February of 2020, I was at a convening of economists in Lexington, hosted by the University of Kentucky's Gatton School of Business. We had Federal Reserve economists there, we had university economists there, and there was a panel of economists presenting February 2020 projections for our national and our state economy. The gap in those projections between national growth and state growth for Kentucky was significant. Well over a full point. Someone in the audience, it wasn't me, but the question was in my head. Someone in the audience asked the panel of economists, why the difference? Why the gap in the national growth and Kentucky's projected growth? And the answer was simple and unequivocal. Education attainment. If we're going to improve the economy in Kentucky, if we're going to improve quality of life in Kentucky, we must improve educational attainment. And that is not about high school graduation anymore. That goalpost has moved. When we talk about educational attainment, we're talking about post-high school certifications, degrees, credentials that are high quality and marketable in our labor force, in our economy. So when Franklin said there are three strategies, education, we would absolutely agree. And say, as we think about those three, it's early childhood, K-12, and post-secondary education. Kentucky has lingered fourth from the bottom, maybe fifth from the bottom of the nation in poverty for many, many years. Regardless of the improvement in education that we've made, we're not moving the needle on poverty. And if there's anything that you take from this presentation today, it's that point. If there's anything else you take from this presentation today, I want you to walk away empowered as a community of Rotarians and empowered as a community that is doable, that you can impact change. One neighborhood, one community, one county, one school district at a time. So with that, I want to also say hello to those of you on Zoom whom I can't see. Thank you for being part of this lunch today. I want to acknowledge and have folks raise their hand if you happen to be a Commonwealth Institute for Parent Leadership Fellow. Sometimes we have those in our Rotary crowds. I don't see any today. Raise your hand if you are an educator, either currently practicing or retired. Okay. Now raise your hand if you employ Kentucky's graduates. Or have employed Kentucky's graduates. I think at that point, we probably have everybody in the room raise their hand with those groups. And I want to thank you for being part of the solution. So I'm going to get into my presentation here. The Prichard Committee's work as of the last few years has really been a commitment to building a groundswell of education champions across the state who are willing to roll up their sleeves in their communities and affect change. So our tagline, building a groundswell for a big, bold future. Jessica, you can, I do have one of my colleagues behind the curtain, as it were, in Lexington, managing the slide deck here. So Jessica, if you would move to the next slide. All right, who we are. We are a group of citizens, nonprofit, bipartisan, nonpartisan, independent, solutions-focused, working for the last almost 40 years with a singular mission. That mission being to improve the quality of education in Kentucky's educational outcomes. Just you go ahead. What we do, very simple. It's in the committee's founding bylaws from 1983. We study issues. We inform folks like you all, policymakers and the media, about what we're learning. And then we engage. We mobilize Kentuckians to figure out solutions and to put those solutions to work locally and in our state capital. We are non-ideological, and that is clear in the early writings of the committee. While the committee led the grassroots, or the groundswell, if you will, to the passage of the Kentucky Education Reform Act, the work didn't start with the goal of designing a reform act for education. The work started with that singular mission of improving education outcomes and studying the research that existed at the time, the strategies that existed at the time to improve those outcomes. So today we remain non-ideological. When something pops up, like charter schools, like exit exams for high school students, the first thing we do is go to the research. What does the research tell us about the effectiveness of that strategy? And we begin an information process to help inform Kentuckians about the effectiveness of that strategy, especially if we're using public dollars for that strategy. We work pre-K, K-12, college, and quality of life, because all of this is about improving Kentucky median household income, quality of life. Go ahead, Jessica. And I think Franklin alluded to this, and maybe I have as well, but I want to be clear that since the beginning of this work in the 1980s, by lots of folks, Prichard Committee included, Kentucky has improved in education, without a doubt. There's no argument. We have moved from the bottom of the national rankings, thank goodness for Mississippi, and hold on for later in this presentation. Thank goodness for Mississippi, to middle of the pack, depending on the indicator we look at. So we have improved because of a shared vision and because of a shared commitment among our policymakers and our citizens to improve education. Now, in the last 5 years, as we look at national rankings, we have started to decline. And that should be a concern to all of us and to those who led this work to improve, that those who are doing this work now ensure that that early work was not in vain. And I'll give you a data point to underscore this decline. In 2017, I believe, Kentucky was 8th in the nation in 4th grade reading. It was at the bottom of the national rankings in literacy, children's focus, a state that had an awful high school graduation rate. 4th, or I'm sorry, 8th in the nation in 4th grade reading, just a few years ago. We've dropped now back down to the 20s. Because other states are leapfrogging us and because we have lost our focus. We as a state have lost our collective focus. So I want you to remember that as well, and I promise I won't give you more than 5 things to remember. I think I'm up to 3. Okay, Jessica, go ahead. All right, so our goal still, almost 40 years into this work, is then to go from middle of the pack to top tier of all states. Good to great, if you will. We made it to good. By golly, we're Kentuckians. We can make it to great. Okay, our theory of change. As we look at the committee's early work, it's always been about mobilizing Kentuckians around a big vision. That remains our theory of change today. If Kentuckians come together with a shared vision and a commitment to improve, it happens. So our job is to bring as many folks under the tent as possible to be part of this shared vision for a big, bold future. And to equip all of you with all the information that we can gather, to translate it, to put it in a form that you can use locally, and to inspire innovation, community collaboration, to move the needle on these outcomes. As a result, I think we'll see systemic improvement from the bottom up, and we'll start to move to that top tier. Jessica? Okay, our big bold future rankings. A few years ago, the Pritchard Committee had something called Top Tier by 2020, and it was national rankings from 2008 to 2020. We've updated that with something we're calling our big bold future national rankings. And the national rankings are 3 in each of 4 categories. They are metrics which we can use to measure ourselves relative to other states. The 4 categories: early childhood, K-12 education, post-secondary education, and quality of life. So we made some strategic decisions about what each one of those 3 metrics would be under each of those categories. Under quality of life, we chose median household income as a measure of quality of life. The percent of Kentuckians with an associate degree or higher, because we know about the impact of education attainment. And we chose voter turnout, not because we as an organization do work on voter turnout, but because it's the best proxy we could get as a state, as a national ranking for community engagement. So our work underneath that metric is really about community engagement. And we know that when communities are engaged, they're exercising their voice, their right to be part of decision making. They're also more likely to show up. Oh, did we look stuff? Okay. So we'll go kind of quickly through the next few slides. There is a QR code embedded in some of our slides. And for anybody that's used that at restaurants through COVID, you know well what a QR code is. You hold your camera up to that QR code and it will bring that document right to your phone. So if you see that QR code, there's something there that Jessica has embedded, a little surprise or something that you can go to access. One of these things is this Big Bold Future National Rankings Report. So the difference between the previous report and the new one is that 4th piece around quality of life. The committee really asking the question, 40 years in, has our big bet on education impacted the quality of life of Kentuckians? And our answer was no, and not enough. So quality of life is the big addition. A couple other additions, or one other primary addition, and that is looking at disaggregated data in each one of those metrics. When we look at 4th grade reading, based on NAEP, which is our national report card, what do we know about the outcomes of white students, Black students, Hispanic students, Asian students? And if we see differences, are we having a conversation locally about why those differences might exist? So we believe that's important as part of the calculus for moving from good to great. The first big part of this work was about raising all boats, and there's no doubt about it, all boats raised. But now we need to understand the targeted efforts that we need to ensure everybody is doing as well as they need to with respect to our standards for education. Okay, so Jessica, I'm gonna go ahead and move through those. Okay. And fast forward to another tool that we've developed for community conversations. And that is a community profile for each and every school district in the state. So you just see a snapshot of Jefferson County here. It's available on our website. The data is admittedly a few years old now, in part because of COVID, but it's still a good baseline. And in this community profile, what you will find for your school district is a snapshot of education outcomes along a path to larger life. How is Jefferson County doing in kindergarten readiness? How is Jefferson County doing in third grade reading, 8th grade math, college going, post-secondary attainment? And on the third page of this 4-page document, you'll see those disaggregated outcomes. How are Jefferson County's white students doing? How are Jefferson County's Black students doing? How are Jefferson County's students with learning differences doing with respect to the outcomes? And then on the last page, you'll see a smattering of socioeconomic indicators so that you can better understand the context in which you're working from an income standpoint, from a health standpoint. And I apologize to everyone over here. I have not been giving you your due. So it's a tool that we have found that is really helpful for communities to start having a conversation about the things your community is doing well when it comes to education and the things where you want to improve. What we hope to see is communities coming together to design plans, not just relying on our school districts, not saying it's the government's issue, but actually coming together as a community, designing plans to move the needle on some of those outcomes, because you know the unique needs of your community, your families, and your students best. We want to lift up those innovations, those community plans, and share them across the state with other folks who are trying to answer the same questions. Okay, Jessica, I'll go through these next to, so this just, again, kind of what we're doing, engaging Kentuckians to get the higher college attainment and decrease poverty. Some of our challenges: high quality childcare is an issue, persistent achievement gaps are an issue, pandemic learning loss or unfinished learning is an issue, college going is a problem, which is why we have facts out there. College going in the state of Kentucky has dropped precipitously for the last 4 years. This is a big concern. So I was thrilled when Julie shared with me that Rotary was supporting scholarships. But you might also think about how many kids in Jefferson County are filling out their FAFSA to know if they can receive federal grant money to go to college. You can see some of our work there that corresponds with the challenges. And Jessica, I'll keep moving. Julie, how am I doing on time? Okay, great. So I'm going to move us quickly into Julie's question. That's about literacy. But first, you'll see the QR code here for information about the American Rescue Plan, which is the federal dollars coming into each school district to support recovery from COVID. We're doing quite a bit of work on that right now, wanting to underscore that we need to recover from COVID, but we also need to build a new foundation for education coming out of COVID. We learned some things through COVID, and we need to continue to avail ourselves of those innovations that made a difference. Let's not just be lying back to the old, because we know the old wasn't working for everybody. Okay. So literacy starts in early childhood. We know that without a doubt, the brain is developing at its most rapid pace between the ages of 0 and 3. If we miss that window, we've missed an important developmental point for children with respect to literacy, numeracy, later learning, you name it. So literacy starts in early childhood. One of the measures we use is kindergarten readiness to better evaluate how our early childhood systems are doing. And that early childhood system includes childcare, it includes public preschool, it includes hands-home visiting. It includes any initiatives that you might have that are faith-based, or at your grocery store. How are you engaging stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads in those early years? Then we measure with kindergarten readiness. Unfortunately, Kentucky's kindergarten readiness rate, and Jessica, you can move, I think, just kind of lingers right around 50%. 50% of our kiddos are coming into kindergarten ready, based on this screener, based on this snapshot, ready to be successful. You can see some variation, not a lot. Then you can move to the Jefferson County slide, which will mirror what you just saw in the state. So we need to do a better job in that early childhood system to ensure that families are really equipped to be their young learners' first and best teacher. And that the systems that support our families and our workforce, like childcare, are high quality and are supporting that early learning development as well. Okay. Why? We know this has an impact later on third grade reading and numeracy. So you can see here in this slide is from Kentucky Statistics Department within our state government. You can see those students who are ready with, is it enrichments, I think, and then ready with interventions at the bottom, and then just the middle is just ready. So ready with enrichments, they came in above. They stay above. Very few drop. Those who are ready, most of them kind of go over to proficient. Those who needed interventions, very few make it up to proficient. Okay, the next slide, some of this is common sense, which is why we measure kindergarten readiness and then we measure third grade reading and math. This is the slide that has been a great concern to us. And one of the reasons that we have a real stake in excellence with equity for all Kentuckians. What this slide shows us, this was 3 years of cohort data looking at kindergarten readiness, third grade reading and math proficiency. You see that most kids come in around that 50% readiness. There's only one group of students in our state where we see significant decline from relative readiness to lack of proficiency when they get to third grade. Can anybody tell me what group that is? Our African American students. Sometimes we will hear, but when we have these conversations about achievement gaps and other issues, a lot of times folks want to point to home environment. They want to point to community. They want to point outside the system in some way. This slide, this one slide, shows us that our kids are coming in from their families at the relative same point of readiness. Their families have prepared them. Something's not right for them, kindergarten through third grade. So this is the fourth thing I want you to remember. This slide, it was eye-opening for us a couple years ago when we had the first opportunity to run this data. Okay, Jessica. The slide that I just shared with you does not have to be. A few years ago, we started doing bright spots research, and we were looking at the data, analyzing Kentucky's education outcome data, and we were looking for schools and districts who were achieving better than expected. They were somehow getting extraordinary results based on the state average. South Heights Elementary School in Henderson, Kentucky was one of those schools under then principal Rob Carroll, who when I went to visit him, touted his visit to Louisville once upon a time to learn everything that he learned to improve South Heights Elementary. South Heights Elementary School is low income, predominantly African American. Rob took a trauma-informed approach to that school, knowing that many of those students were coming in with trauma, with adverse childhood experiences. He ensured a whole school social emotional approach. He put a 10-block Harlem Children's Zone around that school. The third grade reading and math outcomes for South Heights Elementary for African American students are twice the state average. We can improve the slide I shared. It just takes us committing to doing that. And sometimes nothing more than asking the right question. Okay, next slide. Last year, at the request of House leadership in Frankfurt, we brought together a group of experts, a couple of legislators, some others, to have a conversation about teacher preparation and professional development. Because the other thing we know about achieving extraordinary results is that teaching matters most. The research will show that the most important input in school for better outcomes is teaching. It's the most predictive. So we did a Teaching Matters report, and we were on the heels of Mississippi's big national news. You remember me saying something about thank goodness for Mississippi when I opened this presentation? So Mississippi's performance recently earned it a #1 national ranking in games made in both subjects, reading and math in elementary school. That was Kentucky's story in the 1990s. That is not Kentucky's story today. And you can see on the slide, Kentucky's outcomes, which have stayed pretty flat, or actually in reading declined a point. At the same time, Mississippi was getting significant gains. They had a commitment to standards-based accountability, which Kentucky has had since 1990, but they also invested significantly in preparing their teachers to teach literacy with the best and the most recent science of reading. You'd be surprised what a hot topic it is. So our recommendations, we need better coaching. We need a better coaching structure in our state and in our school districts to truly prepare our teachers to be able to teach literacy based on the science of reading. National board certification is one strategy that Mississippi used and is evidence-based. You have national board certified teachers here in Jefferson County, and we have been pushing the legislature to establish an early career initiative, $1 million. That's pocket change in Frankfurt. $3 million for 3 years, early career initiative to target 300 kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers with national board certification skills. We couldn't get it passed. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. So that's one strategy. The science of reading I've mentioned. This is a question you could ask. What do you know about your colleges that are preparing teachers to teach in Jefferson County schools? Are they relying on the science of reading? How are they using the science of reading? Are they leaning into the philosophy of reading? What's the intersection in their mind between the philosophical approach and the scientific approach? Ask those questions. Attendance. Attendance is predictive of outcomes. Wow, let's think about COVID now. Why are we even debating whether or not there might have been learning loss? Now, Jefferson Countyans, you should all be very proud that your school district sought to be really innovative and establish community hubs to support COVID learning and establish some degree of in-person learning for children in the most safe environment they could. That was really innovative. Okay. The last thing I'll say is I'm wrapping up. Julie mentioned that she opened with Sharon Darling, and Sharon's approach for many years has been to engage families. So a 2-generation approach. Absolutely. Our Kentucky Collaborative for Families and Schools is that approach, and NCFL is one of our partners. So we believe wholeheartedly in engaging families around this work toward that out. Jessica, if you go to the last slide. The 5th thing I want you to remember, I think I did that, just totally off the cuff. If you're interested in being part of a big push for Kentucky to go from good to great, and you believe education is the way we're going to get there, join our Groundswell initiative. It's simply a way for you to raise your hand and say, I want to be part of the next giant, and Kentucky can do it. So join our work, keep asking good questions here locally, and thank you, each one of you, for, as Rotarians, for being part of the healthy civic culture.
I've been really pleased to be a part of the Fisher Committee for a long time and part of the achievement gap study and so forth. And it is eye-opening. There's so much information, so much data. So I invite you all to go on the website and learn more. Reach out to our excellent team if you want to know more specifically. And I do need to give a shout out to, I'm looking at Mary Michael, thinking of Sam Corbett, Franklin, another person who's been really involved in the work. So thank you again. Now I'm pleased to announce something that we wanted to share, but we didn't have two Rotarians here, and wanted to make sure that Luke Schmidt and Larry Sloan were present. And that is that the Rotary Club of Louisville received a second District 67 10 award. We received the Best Community Service Project Award for the Rotary Club of Louisville's Community Impact Committee examines diversity, equity, and inclusion. And even during a challenging time, the Rotary Club of Louisville's Community Impact Committee, chaired by Luke, turned its focus to learn more about the issues of racism, equity, and justice. Through the process, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee was formed with subcommittees hard at work on various issues. And I'd like to invite the committee chairs to please stand as you're recognized. Of course, Luke Schmidt, past President Greg Braun, Rotary Club of Louisville, Internal Issues. Past President Barry Barker, headed up Public Safety. Denise Sears, Policy and Justice Perspective. Larry Sloan, Community Perspective. Past President Tony Kemper, Education. Past President Gene West, Messaging and Outreach. And Kevin Fields, the inaugural chair of the DEI Committee, and a new board member is on our board now. And to be all these folks, just thank you for your leadership, for your commitment, and to all of you all that worked on the committees. Thank you so very much for your very important work for our club and for our community. Award, just so you all can see, and they will be coming and presenting President-elect Gene with a framed copy of the award soon. So now it's my honor to invite Barry Allen, President of the Gaines Foundation, member of the board, and chair of the Awards and Recognition Committee, to present two important awards.
Thank you, President Julie, and my fellow Rotarians. The Rotary Club of Louisville and this community have been the beneficiaries of the same distinguishing leadership traits that today's service above self recipient provides the clients with whom he provides consulting services. And let me mention just three of those leadership traits: savvy, stamina, and sway. And what I mean by savvy is receptive, practical, and shrewd, as in taking advantage of hidden opportunities as an organizer. What I mean by stamina is prolonged mental sustenance and focus as a facilitator. And by sway, I mean influential and rhythmical in his approach as a provider of solutions to the challenges before him. Without his service above self leadership, the Community Impact Committee likely would not have been established. But with his service above self leadership, the Rotary Club of Louisville led this community. First, in identifying key issues and problems related to racism, equity, and justice. Secondly, listening and learning before acting about those key issues and problems. And then thirdly, developing solutions to some of the problems associated with these issues. Our recipient is Paul Harris Fellow Plus, a Paul Harris Society member, and one of the best presidents we've ever had. And the Awards and Recognition Committee is delighted to present the Service Above Self Award to the President of LB Smith and Associates. Well, the inspirational Indian lawyer, political ethicist, civil rights and freedom leader Mahatma Gandhi made this observation many years ago. And it was this: the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. This year's Rotarian of the Year recipient is one of those fortunate individuals who discovered early in life his true vocational calling and proceeded to spend the rest of his life losing himself in service to others. And how fortunate the Rotary Club has been to have been the beneficiary of this Rotarian's life of service through the various avenues of service to the club and to the community since 1997. Truly, he has incorporated into his daily life the discipline of service above self, and the 4-way test is the criterion, the touchstone, the angle from which he thinks, speaks, and acts. He is a Paul Harris Fellow, a Paul Harris Society member, and one of the best presidents we've ever had. Now, the vocational calling in which he lost himself in service of others is that sacred trust of educating young people, and especially those with learning differences. The Awards and Recognition Committee is honored to recognize as Rotarian of the Year, Tony Kipper. Tony is the head of the DePaul School for 6 more days. Tony will be retiring June 30th from the school, but will be continuing his 40+ years of stellar leadership as an educator by losing himself in the service of student learners with documented learning differences at St. X High School. As a co-director of the newly established W. Kip and Joni Viscusi Achievement Center. So once again, congratulations and thank you.
This is an honor. It's also an opportunity to recognize 2 Rotarians who are no longer with us. On a veteran who was persistent and I needed to join a club that I knew nothing about. Brother James Kelly, past president of St. X, who was my sponsor. And also to acknowledge Luke for inviting me to be on the CIC this year, and for Woody Northam, who continues to teach by example and real instruction when it needs to be Rotarian. I'm very grateful. Thanks.
Well, it's truly been an honor to serve as your president, and I certainly could not have envisioned this past year. I'm immensely grateful for how you stayed engaged and supported our club while you too were enduring an uncertain time. Although in-person meetings would have been much preferred, thank goodness for Zoom. We carried on. Each week, I look forward to the excellent array of speakers and pre-meeting hosts that we had the privilege of hearing from each week, Ashley. And seeing you all on the screen and learning more about the club and your organizations and the myriad of activities and service projects making an impact in our community and on people and lands that we will never meet. It's been quite a year. And COVID has had a real impact on some of us here, along with some of our families. And sadly, we lost a number of Rotarians this past 18 months. They were true pillars in our community. And I'm just so grateful that we had the opportunity to create a memorial program that Barry Allen and his team formed and created for us to recognize and remember Rotarians. That is something really special to me, and I appreciate that it happened. And Trees Louisville is our partner in that. A tree will be planted for each Rotarian. As Rotarians, we are the fortunate ones, and I remember Woody at our leadership retreat, he talked about that. He said, really at the cusp, you all, it's about your friendships, it's about your relationships. And I held on to that throughout this year, Woody, so thank you for that. You know, it's really about building acquaintanceships, friendships, and joining together with purpose and meaning through Rotary. We are the fortunate ones. And I'm pleased to recognize the board of directors that have led the club so ably and with great dedication this past year. Their perseverance and positive commitment have helped us move forward even in these challenging times of our club's history, 109 years. Yahoo! So here we are today, and I'm just again so grateful for these board of directors for their service. The ones that served for 2 years, 2019 to 2021, please rise as we recognize you. Larry Sloan, owner of Larry Sloan Sales Company. Julie Scotty James, Vice President of Filson Historical Society. Barry Allen, President and Treasurer of the Gaines Foundation. Barbara Sexton Smith, who's a former Metro Councilwoman, District 4, and Chief Rewireman Officer with BSS Enterprises. Board officers retiring. Vice President John Jennings, Account Executive with the Underwriters Group. Immediate past President Luke Schmidt, LB Schmidt and Associates. And retiring from 2-year terms of service on the Executive Committee, Secretary Chris Whalen, Principal and Digital Marketing Consultant, WSI Digital Win, along with Treasurer Tony Coffey, who's the Principal of Parthenon LLC. He's not here, his daughter is visiting in from California and their family. She just finished her residency as a pediatric oncologist, so we know where he is. So again, I want to thank Gene West, President-elect, who also served on the executive committee. And Rotarians, please join me in saluting this dedicated and outstanding group of board of directors. And I want to also thank our dedicated staff. You know, they're working all the time. Executive Director Alyssa and Executive Administrative Assistant Kinsey, who I'm probably in the lobby because she's always behind the scenes and doing good work for the club. Throughout the year, they stayed focused and helped us carry on. So thank you so very much. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium our new president, Gene West. But first, a little bit about Gene. She's a native of Louisiana. She started her successful career in broadcasting. In her early years, she served as morning anchor for Morning in Louisiana, followed by anchoring the evening and the 10 o'clock news. The Bingham family, owner of WHAS TV in Louisville, recruited Gene to come to Louisville and work as their noon anchor. Then she became the anchor for the evening and the 11 o'clock news anchor. Gene also worked for Wave TV and WFPL FM and is the owner of Basis West Production Company. She's an Emmy Award-winning journalist with a keen interest in science and discovery. Gene established medical breakthroughs and hosted Gene West Medical Digest. Recognized by her peers, Gene was inducted into the Kentucky Broadcasters Hall of Fame in September of 2020. She joined Rotary in 2014 and immediately engaged in the work of the club. She was elected to the board in 2018 and soon after president-elect in 2019. I am so pleased to pass the gavel to our new president, Gene West.
She said with a giant smile. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Rotarians. Kevin Wardell, it is so good to see you. Thank you, Rotarians, for being here. Thank you for your time, your talent, your treasure, your service above self, and for hanging with us during what has got to go down in history as one of the most challenging years in
Rotary Club's history. I would like for all Paul Harris Fellows to please stand. Paul Harris Fellow is a recognition given in appreciation for Rotarian, any Rotarian who donates $1,000 or more to the Rotary Foundation. That is what makes us who we are. These are the Rotarians who put their money where their mission is. And one of my goals before my term is to have all of them standing at some point. We appreciate you, we thank you, and we will salute you at every meeting. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to announce our Rotary Club leadership team for 2021-2022. Please stand when I call your name. Our board of directors for 2021-2023 are Ashley Brower, Communications Director, Foundation for Healthy Kentucky. Neville Blakemore, Chairman, Great Northern Building Products LLC. Fred Cowan, retired judge, Jefferson Circuit Court. Tom Crimmins, President of Mid-America. Your board of directors for 2021-2022, second year of service are Ken Talaji, Vice President, General Manager, Wing TV. Cheryl Kersey, President Kersey Architects. Don Warren, owner, MPI Printing, and Denise Sears, CEO, Supplies International, or SOS International, and Kevin Fields, President and CEO, Louisville Central Community Centers, Inc. Our board officers for the year are Secretary Lori Flannery, CEO, New Directions Housing Corporation, and Treasurer Mike Richardson, Principal Glenview Trust Company. I think Mike is the Finlay greenhouses on this farm. Yeah. Since it's regrets. Ken Grossman, owner, Executive Image Custom Clothier, we affectionately call him Kitty G, and President-elect of our club. Well, who now? Independent writing and editing professional. Please, this is our new team, guys. And also I want to thank our visitors and Rotarians who are with us via Zoom. Now, I would like to ask, can you pass quickly Julie to come back to the stage? And while she's doing that, I have some helpers coming out, I think. Flowers for my it's taken this one. A personal gift, because I gotta tell you, Julie, appreciate the way you have marshaled us through this year, and you did it with courage and grace. Thank you so much. About the fall of 2019, Julie called and said, you know, we'd like to put your name on the slate for president of Rotary Club of Louisville. And I showed her, what? President? And she said, you can't break Rotary. It's over 100 years old. Wait, and her famous last words were, what could go wrong? And I reminded her of that on occasion. But for us, nothing went wrong. We reinvented, reimagined, we reset. We reimagined our meetings. We went totally virtual. We reimagined our meeting space. Look at the spot on the river, free parking. I mean, really? We reimagined our fee structure so that Rotary is now more affordable to poor people, so that we can get more members. And that's the lifeblood of our club. And most important, we responded. We responded to the many crises that befell our community over the past 18 months or so. We were business and civic leaders who were responsive and inclusive, as evidenced by Luke's award in the CIC community. We are going to continue on that path, and it's a good one. And come along with me. Okay, now, exciting news. Set your calendar for September 23rd through the 27th. Rotary International is partners with the Delta Queen Steamboat to focus on cleaning the waterways. We are beginning the first of its kind, a 9-month community service cruise along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, stopping in 7 cities, the 9-day cruise, looking at the impact the environment has on our waterways. The cruise will launch from Louisville. So we get to kick off the launch with a huge celebration and party. You'll be hearing so much more about that. But come with me, join me, get on the committee. If you're not on a committee, please join one and let's get this ball rolling. All right, Rotarians, thank you so much. Do good work and have fun doing it. This meeting is adjourned.